Hi, Creekside Youth. Alham here. It has been a minute since I have seen you guys. And I'm not actually really seeing you now, but I'm excited about whatever this is, anyways. So, I'm going to be talking to you today about John chapter 11, which Carly started us off on last week, but I'll be covering verses 17 through 44. So, admittedly, I wasn't like super caught up on this whole study. So I did a little bit of research and just recap just to make sure I'm up to speed. So I thought what I found was pretty interesting. And even though I'm sure most of you have been like super on it and following, I'm going to share that with you just in case it might be helpful. So, John, the author of this book, he is believed to be the one that Jesus loved, the disciple who Jesus loved. And this book is John's eyewitness testimony about his experience with Jesus. And in chapter 20, so going ahead just a little bit, it reveals that the book's purpose is written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. This is really good context because it's telling us essentially like, well, first of all, the Messiah is the promised deliverer of the Jewish nation who was prophesied about in the Hebrew Bible. So like these people have been hearing about this forever. It's different for us because we like have heard, the whole thing with Jesus's life already. But like they haven't seen him come yet. They've only heard that he's going to come. So John's making a big statement here, like this is a big deal. This is the guy, So then we go into chapter 1, and chapter 1 makes that claim very boldly. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So it's establishing the identity of Jesus as the Son of God, that he himself is the message. He's the promised Savior. So again, really big deal. Like just a big, change from what the other apostles and things have been saying. Not change, but, like really bringing it home. So then the next few chapters, 2 through 10, there's just this whole collection of different signs that Jesus is performing, and the theme is he does something and then it causes a lot of controversy and division as a result of that. So you'll see he does these things, we saw him turn water to wine, we saw him have that taboo conversation with the woman at the well, he heals a paralyzed man, he feeds thousands of people with just these small loaves of bread and fish, and as he does that, people are starting to follow him and love him, but other people are starting to be like, who is this guy? We hate him. And so there's just a lot of division as he's stirring things up. At the same time, he's making all these really big claims, saying things such as people need to be born again, I can offer eternal life. He refers to God as his Father. He says, I am the bread of life. He says, I am the light of the world. He says he and the Father are one. So these claims offend the religious leaders so much that ultimately they set into motion their plan to kill him. So that brings us to chapter 11, where Carly left off. And last week she was telling us the story that talks about Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. They are 3 siblings. They're really good friends and followers of Jesus. So Lazarus got really sick. Jesus is away because he's kind of retreated from the violence and pursuit of him. And his sister, Lazarus' sister, send a message to let Jesus know what's going on with Lazarus. Jesus responds rather nonchalantly, I'm going to stay here for a couple days. And then he goes afterwards, back to where it's really dangerous. And at this point he knows that Lazarus has died, but he makes a claim this is going to glorify God and the Son of God himself. So we're pretty caught up here. Now I'm going to get us to the next section. I'm going to start with verses 17 through 27. I'm going to read them and then I'll talk about them. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, less than 2 miles away. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. As soon as Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Then Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Yet even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." "Your brother will rise again," Jesus told her. Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who comes into the world." So, here you see Mary or Martha have a response to the situation in a very relatable way. She comes out and she's like, "Why didn't you stop this? I know you could have stopped it, so why did you let this happen?" At the same time, she acknowledges that she believes that he is the Messiah. She says, "Yes, I believe." And you see in Jesus's response, he's not like, "Okay, this is why, I didn't stop it." He just kind of answers her with this promise. He says in verse 25 and 26, "Anyone who believes in me will not die. You will, everyone who believes in me will live." That's just his response. So, moving on to verses 28 through 36. Having said this, she went back and called her sister Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." As soon as Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were there with her in the house, consoling her, saw that Mary got up quickly and went out. They followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to cry there. As soon as Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and told him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her crying and the Jews who had come with her crying, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. "Where have you put him?" he asked. "Lord," they told him, "come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Couldn't he who opened the blind man's eyes also have kept this man from dying?" So here you note that, or there's a point being made about other people being there and seeing what's going on. And then Mary comes out and laments some more, or again, like Martha. "I thought you loved us, why did you let him die?" And again, he doesn't answer her. But this time, when he sees her weeping, he joins her. He weeps. It says, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. Side note, if you didn't get a chance to hear Jackson's sermon, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago in the I Will Build My Church series, he talks about this so well. I'm not even going to try to replicate it because it was such a good sermon and I highly recommend it. Anyways, but when he joins her in her weeping, it shows us that this is not a detached God. We have a God who suffers with us. He joins us. Even though he knows how this is going to end, which you'll see in a minute, even though he knows what's coming is much better than this, it paints a picture that no matter how sad or angry we might feel, God is always with us. And so I think that one of the main takeaways that I get from this section so far is the way that people respond. They acknowledge Jesus's love for these people, and at the same time, question why did he let this happen? And we can all relate to that sort of confusion as we go through our own hardships. And I also note the way that he doesn't answer our questions. He doesn't. He holds true to his promises, and he has those promises for us, but he doesn't always have the answers that we're looking for. So for the last few verses, 38 through 44, then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Remove the stone, Jesus said. Martha, the dead man's sister, told him, Lord, there is already a stench because he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you heard me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd standing here, I said this, so that they may believe you sent me. After he said this, he shouted with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, bound hand and foot with linen strips, and with his face wrapped in cloth. Jesus said to them, unwrap him and let him go. This gives me chills. Like, the way it even specifically says he was moved, deeply moved again, and comes to the stone and like calls him by name. It just, like, that picture is so powerful, because it's like easy almost to like think of this as like a sci-fi story, but this is real. Like, imagine the moment that this happened, how just incredibly powerful this moment was. I love Martha's response here. She's like, it's gonna smell really bad, Jesus. And I relate to that so much, because she's just like so human in that moment. She's placing limits on a limitless God. She's placing limits on the possibilities of God, which we all do, like, whether we realize it or not. We just like can't wrap our brain around like what we can envision and what we think is possible. But there's just like so much more when it comes to God. And then Jesus calls Lazarus by name. He prays out loud for the benefit of the crowd and shows us here in this moment that it is never too late with Jesus. That even if we're sure something is hopeless, like all hope is gone, there's nothing too far out of his reach. This story demonstrates such a relatable picture of our relationships with God. Isn't it, like, again, I said this, but I'm going to reiterate, isn't it like so true that God doesn't act like when, where, or how we think, right? Like, he almost never does. But we live and we wait in hope. That's the life of a believer. He is always with us, and in the case of death, it is never the final word. So I think the last question I have is that, as powerful and amazing as this story is, some of us might be left thinking, like, great, cool story, but like, why doesn't God do this for us? Like, why doesn't he perform these miracles like in our lives, like this kind of miracle? And I think what's important is going back to verse 25, when he says that everyone who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Like, he's offering eternal life now, just through your faith and belief in him. And we know that one day the resurrection will come. God will call all of us by name, and the impossible will become possible, and death will not have the final word. So that's it for this week. We'll see how this carries out next week with as the plot to Jesus kind of really builds up from here and it enters his final days. I hope to see you guys soon.